All right, guys, so we're starting 18.2 today. It's called Growth and Decay. This is actually the last real new lesson before we take the STAR test. It's a pretty easy one. You just have to remember what all the variables mean in our general formula for exponential growth. The formula is A equals C times 1 plus or minus R to the T. Now, we need to make sure we know what all those variables are, and we can fill them in. So A is going to equal your final amount. This is usually what we're actually looking for. Sometimes they may give us the final amount and we have to work backwards. C is what you call your initial amount or your starting amount. In most of these problems, they'll say starting with some number. That's our initial amount. In the middle of the equation, we have in parentheses 1 plus or minus R. Well, the plus or minus depends on what's happening. If we're going to use a plus, that means we had something that's got growth going on. You'll be able to tell it's getting bigger. If we're using subtraction, that means decay, something that's getting smaller. Those should be pretty easy to tell if you read the word problems. R is going to be our rate, which will be a percentage, and then T is the easiest one, it's time. And generally, when we're talking about this, we're talking about years. So we're going to use those. We've got a few word problems to work through. They're actually pretty quick. You will need a calculator to finish them off. So let's go ahead and look at those. Number 1, the population of Johnson City has grown at a rate of 3.2% per year since 1989. If the population in 1989 was 25,000 people, what was the population in the year 2000? So we need a few variables here. It's asking us for a final amount. So A is what we're going to be looking for. So let's see if we have a C, R, and a T. Well, the C is the initial amount. That would be how much we started with. Well, it tells us that in 1989, the year this started, they had 25,000 people. So there's our C. We also need a rate and a time. Now, the rate is given by a percentage, 3.2. But we need it converted into a decimal. So remember, we move our decimal place back 2 spaces, and we get 0.032. That's probably going to be the most common mistake people make is they're going to plug in 3.2. You have to move the decimal back 2 spaces. And then time, this one can be kind of weird. We started in 1989, and they're asking us about 2000. So we need the number of years in between there. You could take 2000 and subtract 1989. You'd get 11. However, I mean, you can use common sense to find that, so T is 11. Now we just need to plug it into our equation, and it's basically a calculator problem. So I'm looking for A. That equals our C value, which is 25,000, times 1, and I see this word grown up here. That means I'm going to be adding plus my rate, 0.032. I'm going to close parentheses and raise that to the time, which is 11. So guys, that's basically just putting it in your calculator and getting out an answer. Be careful. Remember to go to the 11th. You'll need that caret sign outside of your parentheses. Other than that, you're putting in exactly how we wrote it. When you write it in, you should have got 35,352 people, and that's rounded. Remember, we can't have half a person, so even if it was 35,352.9, that's 35,352 people. So those are pretty easy problems. You need to write out your variables. You need to pay attention. I would use this homework these notes when you're working on your homework and keep it right in front of you. All right, let's look at another one. A tractor has a depreciation rate of 19% per year. If the original price of a tractor was $29,000, what's the value of the tractor 5 years later? So this one's actually pretty clear in what it's asking for and what it's giving. It wants to know how much the tractor is worth after 5 years. And, you know, when you get older, you should know when you own a car, things like that, they lose value every year. Well, this tractor has a rate of 19% per year depreciation. Remember, that's 19%, but we need to move the decimal 2 places, so we're going to use the rate 0.19. Then we need to find our C, which is our initial value, our starting value. Well, we bought the tractor for $29,000. Now we need our time, and it's pretty easy marked here. It wants to know the value 5 years later, so our T is 5. So we can plug those in just like we did last time. Now we have A equals 29,000, the starting value. I have open parentheses 1, but this time it says depreciation. Now you should realize that it's going to go down. When you own something for a while, the value goes down, so it's going to be subtraction. So we're going to subtract our rate, 0.19, and we're going to raise that to the fifth. So guys, basically the exact same problem as last time, except for this one, the number needs to be smaller, so we use subtraction. Now again, that's just a calculator problem. You can put it in there pretty easy. I got that A, after 5 years, the tractor is going to be worth $10,111.67. So there you go, guys. So be careful, use keywords. I mean, the last one said growth. This one said depreciation, which means it's going to be getting smaller. All right, let's look at number 3. Now, this one's actually pretty useful. I mean, you are going to want to save money at some point in your life, and this actually works out pretty well. Interest rates can be different, but, I mean, this is the basic principle. Suppose you invest $1,000 into an account that pays 5.5% interest compounded annually. Find the balance after 3 years. So it's the same basic problem, guys. We know that we're going to start off with $1,000. That's how much we're going to invest, so that's our C value. Our rate in this one is 5.5%. So if we move our decimal place, we get 0.055. And then time is pretty easy. It says find the balance after 3 years. So we can plug all that in. So A equals 1,000 times 1. In this one, it doesn't really tell us, but you would think if we're investing, it's going to be growing. So I'm going to plus 0.055, and I'm going to raise that to the third. So when we put that in our calculator, you get A is about $1,174.24, which makes sense, guys. I mean, you know, if you think about savings account, they don't grow super fast. So it is a bigger number, so it's probably good that probably means that we got it right. So, guys, that's a pretty easy one. You got to plug in some stuff. You got to use your calculator. Make sure you fill out the variables properly. That's probably going to be the worst thing. Watch your percentages. Make sure and convert them down to decimals. Now, we need to look at one more. This is not from today. This is something that we have a lot of trouble with, and it's on homeworks a lot, and a lot of you just leave them blanks, and that's factoring. I have 2x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 0, and the way to factor that is the swing method. Remember, in this one, we have to find the sum and the product. The sum being the B value, the product being A times C. And that's if we have AX squared plus BX plus C. So if I look here, my B is 5, so that's my sum. My product is A times C, which is 2 times negative 12, which gives me negative 24. Now I need to break apart negative 24 and find something that adds up to 5. Well, 1 and 24, there's no combination of those that'll work. 3 and 12, I'm sorry, not 3 and 12, 2 and 12, also there's no combination that'll add up to 5. But if I look at 3 and 8, I need one of them to be negative. If I have negative 3 and 8, that does add up to 5. So there's the two numbers that I'm looking for. So I can come back over here. I'm going to open up my parentheses. Then we just put those two numbers in. I'm going to have minus 3 and plus 8. But remember, at the end, we have to divide by A, which is 2, and simplify. So I have x minus 3 over 2. Well, that cannot be simplified. It already is. So I'm going to swing the 2 up to the front. I get 2x minus 3. Then x plus 8 over 2. 8 over 2 simplifies to 4. So there's my answer. Now, guys, you could check yourself by doing some distribution. We could say 2x times x is 2x squared. That's a good shot because that's actually our first term. 2x times 4 is plus 8x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. If I add that up, combining my like terms, I get 2x squared plus 5x minus 12, which is what I wanted. So, guys, you've got to be able to do that. It's going to come up on your STAR test. Make sure and get your homework done, guys. This is a pretty quick and easy one. This is our last homework on new material this year. If you have any questions, let me know.